Hello there.
Since the dawn of the Clone Wars to the fall of the First Order, there has been countless of different battle droids, each serving a unique purpose to serve their masters. For some, it was to calculate hyperspace jumps. For others, it was to take down any threat that might oppose their masters. So, for today's video, I will be discussing each battle droid in Star Wars. But before we get on to the video, please note, I might be missing some. There is a lot, so sorry if I do miss some. Starting off with these droids, you have the B-1 battle droid is the most iconic of them all. The B-1 battle droid is a standard military unit that the Confederacy of Independent Systems, or otherwise known as the Separatist, used during the Clone Wars. While by themselves they were extremely ineffective, but in large groups they could easily overwhelm and take down an enemy. They were also super cheap and easy to produce. That is why there are so many more B-1 battle droids than clones. And after the events of the Clone Wars, all B-1 battle droid would be outlawed within the New Republic. There are several variations of the B-1 battle droids. One of those variations is the B-1 commander droids. They were usually identified with yellow markings on their bodies and served as leaders in the droid army. Just like the B-1 commander droids, B-1 pilot droids were also distinguished by the markings, but this time with blue markings. These droids typically were the ones that piloted the Separatist warships. There also were security droids that were known for their red markings. These droids were known for protecting Separatist ships and protecting important military or key Separatist strongholds. But as you've seen multiple times, they were pretty ineffective against Jedi. The next droid is a B-1 rocket droid. Their job was to go to destroyed Republic ships and locate escape pods with survivors in the aftermath of a space battle and kill all the survivors. These droids' markings were orange and black. They also were supplied with rocket packs and fusion cutters to make their job easier and more effective. B-1 AAT drivers are, as you would guess, the droids that drove the AAT tanks. These droids were painted with camouflage markings and piloted the tanks supplied by the Separatist armies. There also were B-1 firefighter droids. These droids were marked with black, yellow, and red. These droids would carry larger backpacks than most B-1 battle droids and also had a built-in fire extinguisher. They were also capable of handling large water hoses to put out explosions or fires that happened within the Separatist ship. The next B-1 battle droid is the jungle battle droid. These droids are painted with green camouflage, similar to the AAT drivers. These droids were sent out on the Battle of Kashyyyk. The next battle droid on this list was not used by the Separatists, but instead was used by the Kaminoans to train clone initiates on Kamino. These droids were painted white and had orange target marking on their body to show the clone where the weak spots on the droid were located. The next on this list, we have the B-1 engineer battle droid. These droids were specifically programmed to go out in a battlefield and perform engineering, piloting, or demolition to the Separatist army during the Clone Wars. These droids were marked with orange markings on their shoulders and heads. The next B-1 battle droid on this list are Battle Droid Marines. The Battle Droid Marine were distinguished by their green markings. The Battle Droid Marines also were supplied with a backpack that could carry any item that they needed. These droids' main purpose was to attack Republic Navy Corps. These droids would either be charged with defending a ship or boarding a Republican ship. These next couple of droids have not been seen in the animated shows or in live action that I'm aware of. These next droids have only appeared in games only. Starting off with the B-1 battle droid from Battlefront 2, we have the B-1 heavy battle droid. This droid was armed with a Z-6 rotary blaster cannon and was identified with their orange and black markings, although these droids have only appeared in Battlefront, so we do not know if they're canon or legends. And in the Star Wars game Galactic Defenders, they also introduced a couple of B-1 battle droids, and it is unfortunate that these droids have not been seen in the larger stories, which is really sad because these droids are really cool and deserve more attention. Starting off with the B-1 grapple droid. The grapple droid had the color markings of white and green, and they were armed with large claws for close quarter combat. The next B-1 battle droid is a B-1 repeater blaster droid. This droid had the same markings as a regular B-1 battle droid, but carried a heavier weapon. But other than that, very little is known about it. The next droid on the list is the rocket launcher droid. These B-1 droids, as their name suggests, carried a rocket launcher. Similar to the B-1 repeater blaster droid, they also looked extremely similar to the B-1 battle droid, their only difference being the weapon of choice. Another droid in this game that was mentioned was a B-1 recall droid of some type, but we do not really know much about it. And with that, we come to an end on the B-1 part of the list. We will now be moving on to the B-2 battle droids, or otherwise known as the super battle droids. These droids were equipped with wrist blasters on their forearms, making them far more stronger and more durable and more dangerous than the previous B-1 battle droid. But this came at a cost of them being a little more expensive, which is why they were not as common as the B-1 battle droid. And after the fall of the Empire, these droids would be recommissioned and be used by some independent faction. The next B-2 battle droid is the B-2 Heavy Assault Super Battle Droid. These were armed with rocket launchers that fired homing missiles. Due to this, they were extremely dangerous in combat. The next B-2 battle droid is the B-2 Rocket Droid. These droids had a modification that had a jetpack installed into them, which allowed them to fly. These droids are typically marked with white markings, although those droids would eventually be faded out by the B-2 Super Rocket droid. These upgraded droids had a upgraded jetpack that had larger thrusters mounted on their shoulders, which meant they could travel farther in shorter time. The B-2 grapple droid was way more advanced than the B-1 grapple droid, created for hand-to-hand combat. These B-2 battle droids were distinguished by their blue markings. The next droid on this list is the B-2 ACM. The B-2 ACM is basically just an upgraded regular B-2 Super Battle droid, only with a larger laser cannon mounted on its wrists. Near the end of the Clone Wars, the Separatists were experimenting on creating a new type of B-2 battle droid known as Cortosis B-2 Super Battle droid. These droids would have had immunity to lightsaber strikes and blaster bolts, but the factory that was producing them would be destroyed before they could be mass-produced. There also were a couple of B-3 battle droids that we were seeing towards the end of the Clone Wars, and they are countered by the Jedi Master known as Quinlan Vos. The next droid on this list is the BX Droid Commandos. These droids were probably the most advanced and most dangerous droid unit in the Separatist armies. Unlike some of their fellow droids, the BX Commandos were extremely agile and nimble, making them much more of a difficult target. They also were quick to adapt to new weapons and new situations. The BX Commando Captain was distinguished by their white markings on their face and chest plate. These BX Commandos usually led the other BX droids on special missions. We'll now be moving away from the B series of the droids. We have AQ series, or Aqua droids. These Aqua droids, as their name suggests, were specifically designed for missions underwater, where they are armed with a laser cannon in their right arm. We also have the C-8 Saboteur droid, which is used for spying and espionage missions. Unfortunately, though, it has only appeared in role-playing material. This next droid is certainly a unique one. The D-1 Aerial Battle Droid was created by the Techno Union and was the main defense on one of their facilities on Skako Minor. The D-1 Aerial Battle Droid was equipped with wings that allowed them to fly. They also looked really unique from the other B-1 battle droids. We also have the IG series droids. Similar to IG-88 and IG-11, or now known as IG-12, they were developed by the Separatist Army, specifically from the Intergalactic Banking Clan. These droids were some of the most highly feared droids in the galaxy, due to one of their members, IG-88, almost committing galactic genocide on all living things in the Star Wars galaxy. Similar to the IG series droids, we have the IG Lancer droids. These IG units were armed with lances and were often seen on cavalry or speeder bikes, similar to how knights of the medieval time used to ride horses. Following the trend of the IG units, we have the IG-100 Magna Guards. These droids would specifically follow and defend General Grievous as his bodyguard. Although we have also seen these IG units have been used by Count Dooku as well, and we have seen in Revenge of the Sith and Clone Wars that they are difficult to kill, and even can continue on functioning without their head. They were supplied with an electro staff which could parry a lightsaber. We also have the unknown battle droid that was seen on the Separatist invasion on the planet of Hishrik, likely under the employment of the droid AD-4W. The next droid on the list is a T-Series tactical droid, which was created to lead and direct the Separatist droid army. While they might not have been the best in combat, their intelligence was far superior to any other battle droid that served the Separatist, and they also had a higher independency. The next droid is fairly similar to the T-Series tactical droid. The only difference was this one being far more superior in almost every way possible. The ST, or Super Tactical Droid, would be a developed leader in the Clone Wars by the Separatist armies to adapt more quickly to the battlefield changes and improbable events. The next droid on the list is hands down one of the coolest droids ever. The Droidicas, or otherwise known as Destroyers, were feared by the Republican forces due to them having ray shields and being able to roll up in a ball that can travel up to 75 kilometers per hour, and one repeating blaster cannon on each arm. Due to all of these factors, they were extremely difficult to kill and extremely dangerous. A variation of these droids were also known as Droidica sharpshooters. The sharpshooters would be armed with a single blaster rifle in the center of their chest that would be used for sniping down its targets. In the mobile game of Star Wars Commander, we have a droid known as the Droidica Sentinel. This droid had a different design and had much more heavy firepower. Another variant is the Droidica Suppressor. This droid would have been developed late into the Clone Wars and unfortunately would never see official use, but some models of this variant would be seen across the galaxy as heavy artillery. The next droid is the DSD-1, or Dwarf Spider Droid, with similar in a few ways with the Droidica Sharpshooter due to it having one laser rifle in the center of its face that could shoot out one large blast or multiple miniature blasts. Similar to the Dwarf Spider, the J-1 proton cannon had one large laser rifle in its center of his face The proton cannon was mainly used for shooting down enemy aircraft. They fired proton bombs and were stabilized by 4 legs. The LM-432 crab droid was a small 4-legged tank model, but there was another variant of the crab droid that had 6 legs. The crab droid's artillery consisted of 2 blasters on its underside, and its legs were strong enough to break through the armor of an enemy vessel. The next droid on this list is the LR-57 combat droid, and were actually rarely seen throughout the events of the Clone Wars. Its artillery consisted of 2 arms that each held laser cannons, and as we've seen in the Clone Wars animated movie, they could be buried underground and could be set up for traps for any unsuspecting enemies. Another droid on this list is the Infiltration Demolition droid. These droids are rarely seen throughout the galaxy, specifically designed to look like sweeper droids, so they can access their way into high security facilities. There, they would transform and neutralize any enemies, and then transform again into a bomb. The next droid on this list is called the Topa Sabotage droid, or the Buzz droid. These droids were created to board and cripple any enemy vessels. They could even be loaded into missiles to be fired at their enemies, and when the missile exploded, it would release all the Buzz droids hidden inside of them. The next droid is the Chameleon droid, though this has only been mentioned in role-playing material. But if we had to guess, they would have been the same as they were in Legends, where they were another form of sabotage droids, where they could lay mines and use hollow projectors to blend into their surroundings. The Millipede droid was used by the Umbarans, so I don't really classify them as a battle droid, but I will still mention them because these droids were small and were capable of sneaking into combat zones and killing their targets. Now, if you're not a fan of spiders, I suggest you skip this one. The next droid is the SDK-4 Assassin droid. These droids were extremely large and spider-like, with 8 long, sharp spider-like legs that were designed for assassination. It was also capable of releasing 30 smaller spider droids called SDK-4A Assassin droids. The droids would be released from pores on the larger components' heads. These droids were extremely small and due to that, difficult to kill. The next droid is the Separatist Probe droid. These droids were mainly used for reconnaissance and scouting, but if necessary, were also capable of attacking or defending themselves with blasters. The Hailfire class droid tank was a droid tank that had 2 missile launchers that each held 15 guided missiles, as long as a twin auto blaster. It was originally created by the Intergalactic Banking Clan to collect debt, which seems overkill. The MRN-99 Persuader class droid enforcer, similar to the others, was also another model of a tank. It was designed to travel through both land and water. If it was in water environments, it would use 1 long tread in the center of its body and 2 smaller treads on its sides. It was armed with iron cannons, heavy blasters, and missiles. As you can imagine, these droids were extremely dangerous and destructive. The next droid is the Octupera Tri-droid. This droid was a 3-legged walker that was used throughout the Clone Wars by the Separatists. The standard design for a regular-sized one stood at a whopping 15 meters tall, but a smaller one would only stand out to be 3.6 meters tall. But no matter the height, they were all armed with 3 laser cannons and missile launchers, and occasionally might have even contained biological weapons. The next droid on this list is the OG-9 Spider droid. This Spider droid was a 4-legged walker, and about half the size of the previous Tri-droid. Its arsenal consisted of laser cannons mounted on the top and bottom of its body. The next droid on this list is the Droid Harvester. This droid was used to mine energy, as we've seen on the planet of Hishrik. This next droid is a classic. The Vulture droid class Starfighters was a primary use of weapons in separatist battles in the sky. Their arsenal consisted of 2 blaster cannons and 2 rocket launchers. They even had Buzz droid missile launchers, but when not flying in the sky, they would transform into a walking model, similar to the B-1 battle droid. By themselves, they were not effective, but in groups, they were extremely dangerous. The next droid is a Hyena droid bomber. This droid was a variant of the Vulture droid. This droid was specifically designed to be effective in bombing routes. These Vulture droids were more heavily armed with quad laser cannons to missile pods that could hold proton torpedoes or concussion missiles, and of course could hold 4 massive bombs. We also have the unknown Vulture droid that appeared in the Destiny shorts. Unfortunately, we do not know the name of it, but we do know that it was designed for spying and reconnaissance mission. The next on this list is the Droid Tri-Fighter. This droid was far more faster and way more maneuverable than the Vulture droid. This droid had a more advanced droid brain, and its arsenal consisted of 4 laser cannons, concussion missiles, and proton torpedoes. And similar to the Vulture droid, could fire Buzz droids as well. This next droid is a heavy missile platform droid gunship. This gunship was an extremely heavily armed air speeder that was used for battles in the atmosphere. Their weapons consisted of 4 laser cannons, a medium laser cannon that could hold up to 28 missiles. They can even display E-series battle droids into Warzone. These droids were seen on the Battle of Onderon, where one spun out of control and killed Saw Gerrera's sister. This next droid is known as a Decimator. It received its name due to it being a small floating ball that used energy to search, locate, and destroy any organic life forms. They also had laser cutters to access closed-off spaces. Despite the fact that the Republic was at a war with separatists whose main army was droids, the Republic did utilize some battle droids to help them, such as the GU Guardian Police droid. These droids were deployed on Coruscant and were able to use force on certain organic beings if laws were broken. There also were the spaceport police droids who were deployed on multiple spaceports throughout the galaxy. And with that, we've reached the end of the droids that served during the Clone Wars. Although most of the battle droids were outlawed at the end of the Clone Wars, a ton of organizations, including the Empire, used many loopholes to keep battle droids within the ranks. Directly after the Clone Wars, a new droid would come out. It would be the Imperial Police droid. This droid would be seen defending a droid dismemberment facility on the planet of Corellia. There also were the KX series security droids. These droids' main goal was to provide extra security and protection to important Imperial facilities. This next droid on the list is also a very iconic droid, that droid being the Imperial probe droid. This droid would be an improved version of the separatist probe droid. A standard model of the Imperial probe droid had a blaster and a self-destruct sequence on its body, but very similar to the surface, probe droid's main goal was spying and reconnaissance. There also is a Prowler Seeker 1000 droid. This droid was smaller than the probe droids, also utilized by the Empire. The Prowlers weren't really designed for long-distance travel, but instead were used for local surveillance. The Prowler had multiple limbs, as well as a flat disc-shaped body, and a transceiver disc that was positioned on the Prowler's underside, allowing it to send transmissions even after the droid was seemingly destroyed. This next droid is another probe droid. The ID-9 is a miniature probe droid that was used by the Seventh Sister. This droid had 5 limbs and a large red sensor that could track and record. Its primary weapon consisted of an electric shock that could be used against all organic and non-organic things. The successor to this droid was the ID-10 droid that was used by the Inferno Squad leader Iden Versio in the Battlefront game. This droid had 4 limbs instead of 5. This next droid is very similar to the Imperial probe droid. The 11-3K Imperial probe droid was smaller, but made up for that by being way more heavily armed. This next droid on the list is the DT Series Sentry droid. This droid was developed as protection and guards to any sensitive Imperial ship, but also were used as combat training units in their arsenal consisted of the right arm being an E11 blaster rifle. A variant of this droid is the Imperial Sentry droid. This droid was painted white and was used for training, but also could be adapted to be using live ammunition. The next droid on this list was the successor to the D-Series Sentry droid. The Dark Trooper was created by the Imperial Remnant and was led by Moff Gideon. After the Great Civil War, these droids were extremely dangerous in hand-to-hand combat and each held a large blaster rifle and had rocket boosters on their feet which allowed flight in space and in atmosphere. There also is the Phase 2 Dark Trooper that we got to see in the Star Wars Commander, but we do not know if it is officially canon. Another droid from The Mandalorian is the droid that worked for Morgan Elsbeth. The HK-87 Assassin droid served Morgan Elsbeth. These droids are nimble and acrobatic. You also get to see a variant of these droids in the new Ahsoka show. And in the show, these droids also carried a bomb in their chest. Even the New Republic used droids such as the N5 Sentry droid. These droids were used by the New Republic Correctional Center on prison ships and other facilities. There's also the Unknown Sentry droid. This droid was seen on most prison transports and had a similar resemblance to the R1 Astromech droid. Even the First Order utilized battle droids to help them, such as the First Order Sentry droid that was commissioned on various First Order facilities. They also used sentry droids. The First Order Sentry droid patrolled the Star Destroyers and other important facilities to the First Order, and underneath its plating had multiple weapons that could be used against any enemies that might pose a threat to it. Another droid that the First Order used was the First Order Patrol droid. This droid would wander the surface of Starkiller Base and catch any intruders that might try to infiltrate Starkiller before they could get in. The First Order probe droids were also reinforced by all-terrain patrol droids. These droids were armed with 2 heavy laser cannons and could ward off any and all opposing threats. Similar to all the other empires before it, the First Order also utilized probe droids. The Spider probe droid was similar to the other probe droids, but unlike those other ones, this one had heavy armor and could release even more probe droids from inside, and each arm had a blaster. The First Order even had a larger probe droid. The First Order probe droid provided security to First Order personnel in the unknown regions and kept the New Republic away from the First Order's secret. It also had an unknown probe droid that could be seen on Star Destroyers. But not all battle droids were deployed by the Republic, Separatists, or the Empire. Some of these droids were deployed by criminal factions, such as the S-43 Enforcer droid. This droid was used by the Hutts in the Clone Wars. And while it may have been used by the Hutts, it was actually built from stolen droid plans from the Separatists. and similar to the other battle droids, it has only been mentioned in role-playing material. This next droid will only appear after the end of the Clone Wars and near the extinction of the Geonosians that created the B-1 battle droids. A Geonosian queen called Katrina would make modified B-1 battle droids in an attempt to continue on her species, but would inevitably fail. Even the Pike Syndicate utilized droids such as the Scorpionic droid when they tried to take over the planet of Tatooine for their spice trades. These droids stood very tall with their 4 legs. They also had an artillery of 2 dual laser cannons and a deflector shield that was near impossible to penetrate. These next 2 droids aren't technically battle droids, but they're so cool. There are more so torture droids and assassin droids. These 2 droids I'm talking about are 000 and BT-1, but I feel like due to their artillery, they deserve a spot on the list. And since we're going to add those types of droids in, I feel like it's only fitting that we have Mr. Bones in. Technically, he's only a modified B-1 battle droid, but he's so cool we have to give him a spot. Mr. Bones was created by Snap Wexley during the Galactic Civil War. He had the color marking of black and red, and carried a laser rifle. He even had a vibro blade built into his arm. His programming was also a lot more superior than his other B-1 battle droid brothers, making him a lot more dangerous, and would be put into a commander droid that would also be destroyed. It is so cool to see that there are so many different types of battle droids in Star Wars. Who are your favorite battle droids? Let me know in the comments below. And please let me know if I did miss any droids. Make sure you like and subscribe, and with that, my fellow Star Wars nerds, may the Force be with you.